Is April 27th, 2009. We're at the Collins Church with the Tawasi Home Club. My name is Deb Lawrence, and now we're going to just turn it over to the ladies.
Okay, my name is Marna Smalley, is my maiden name Morris, and I live in Smith Township, and I've lived in Smith Township all my life, so therefore I lived in Whitley County all my life. We currently live in the southeast corner of Whitley County, and I attended all 12 years of school in Churubusco, and at that time I lived in town about a block from downtown with my grandparents. My mother was divorced when I was about 4, which was almost unheard of then, but I lived with my grandparents, and she went to work at GE and lived with some ladies in Fort Wayne, and I saw her every weekend. And my grandparents were wonderful people. My grandfather had a repair shop. He worked on small engines, Maytag washing machines, which I had a square tub Maytag washing machine for about 3 years after we first got married, and it was really good. And then he worked on, he sharpened the reel lawnmowers, which are making a comeback now. He did that on the back porch of the old 2-story house that we lived in. And from that, he went to be a lawn boy repairman, lawn boy lawnmowers, and had a franchise for that. But my growing up years were just full of a lot of good things. What kind of things we do after school? Well, when I was pretty young, I had kind of a carefree life. I didn't have too many responsibilities at home. I can remember we had an alley that went from the high school to Mulberry Street, and I lived on Mulberry Street. And I was really a tomboy, wasn't I, Connie? You remember? I used to race the boys down the alley to the library and everything, and I just about always beat them. Always made me feel good. So anyway. And we went to Barnhart's drugstore, which was right down on Main Street. Dave Barnhart had that drugstore, I don't know how many years, but some of us used to go in there after school and we'd get a nickel Coke and a nickel's worth of cashews, and that was our after-school snack. We did that quite often. And sometimes we got a sundae or a soda, and of course it was the old soda fountain. It was wonderful. We really enjoyed that. And then we went to the library a lot, which was upstairs in the Flatiron building. And Nettie Gerard was a librarian forever, I guess, there. I don't remember anyone else being a librarian there. And did a lot of reading then. And went to friends' houses, and we roller skated a lot. I used to roller skate on my little steel roller skates all over Busco. And I still got scars on my knees from that, so sidewalks weren't in very good shape, but we used to have a lot of fun doing that. Right? Rode our bicycles a lot. I think we were probably in better physical condition than what some of the kids are now. We didn't have TV then. We had radio, but my grandfather got a TV as soon as he could, but I never really watched it a whole lot. I was doing other things, I guess. But a lot of good memories of school. We had noon girls basketball and volleyball. That was when girls could only dribble twice. They had to pass the ball. You remember that, don't you, Connie? Be a lot more fun now, I think. But anyway, and we had these gym outfits we wore with the little bloomer things. I tell you, I hated those things. Oh, gosh. But we had a lot of fun. We had a junior store at school, and we'd take turns working in that. And we, in home ec class, we'd fix, I think they made the sloppy joes in home ec class, or I remember right, that was downstairs. And of course the school isn't there anymore, it's been torn down. I have a brick left from that, but had a lot of good times there and everything. And then they had the adult men's softball games in back of the school there, back at the one ball diamond that we had and everything, and those are always enjoyable. My grandmother loved softball, so when I was just a kid, we used to go to those a lot. And we didn't have Turtle Days then, but I can remember Old Settlers Days. We went to that every year, and they really had a lot of older people that were quite involved in that at the time. And one thing I can remember was my great-grandmother was still living. That was my grandfather's mother, Vietta Gaff. And I know one time the Stag was downtown across from the courthouse. That used to be the men's bar and card room. And the women, I don't know if they weren't allowed to go in there or they just knew they weren't supposed to be going in there. But I think they had gambling and everything back upstairs in those back rooms. But, well, make a long story short, I guess my great-grandfather liked to go in there. Of course, my great-grandmother was a Nazarene, and she was really religious. She frowned on anything like that. I guess one time she went, I don't know if she went in there, but she went to the door and made him come out of there and everything, which caused some, oh dear. But, and then on Saturday evenings in Busco, I can remember even before I went to school, probably was about 5 or 6 years old, every Saturday night, and there are some pictures around of downtown Churubusco on Saturday night. The sidewalks were just packed with people. You remember that. The farmers all came into town and brought their families with them, and everybody was out on the sidewalks visiting and socializing. That was our social time, that and church activities. You know, and I think that, well, they used to have the movies out at Blue Lake too, I think. I think they used to show the movies out there. And there was a dance hall out at Blue Lake. My mom can remember going there. My mother's 90 now. But she said that was quite a resort area out at Blue Lake at that time. And it was really a beautiful place. But she said, oh yeah, she said we used to go to the dances out there a lot. And gosh, do you remember any stores or businesses that were in operation then that are gone now? And I had a slew of those. I guess Leach's Grocery downtown. They had fresh meats, they had groceries, and they also had a big locker there. And I can remember that was my first experience at shopping. My grandparents lived 2 blocks from downtown, and I think I was about 6 years old. And he would give me enough money to go downtown and get a loaf of Silver Cup bread. And that was when they had bread packed in the wax wrappers, and it was white, and it had red and blue lettering on it. So that was one thing I remember real well. Well, I walked past the lumber company, which is no more there. It's now Brevin's Restaurant. That whole area there used to be, we had a large lumber company, and I'll let Norma tell about her dad. But once in a while I'd go over there with my grandfather and walk through that, and I just thought that was just the biggest, you know. It was kind of scary, really, because I was just a kid. But anyway, that was some of the things I remember. When I had to walk downtown, I had to go past the Chevy garage, which is part of C&A Tool now. It was right beside right across from the alley there from, oh, what do they call it now? It used to be the 33 Club, still the 33 Club. What? Pit Stop. Okay, but anyway. Well, Babe Jones, Barb's father-in-law, and Bucky Harrell. Bucky was, he and his dad were I think they were the owners of that at that time, and Hood's dad worked there, and they'd see me coming down the street, and they just loved to tease me. Well, my grandmother's nickname was Shorty, and that's what everybody called her. And when I'd walk by there, they called me Little Shorty, and I didn't like that, and they'd just get me doing something terrible. But then they just laughed and laughed and laughed. They had a lot of fun with that. Fisher's gas station is now the parking lot of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church downtown there in Busco used to be the Methodist Church. And Rapol's gas station is no longer there. That is where Valero gas station is now. And that was kind of a gathering place. A lot of the men gathered down there and took care of the town gossip and all that kind of stuff, you know. Got a pop to drink or something. And of course, the Churubusco State Bank is no longer there, and have a lot of fond memories of that. The Monument Works, there was a house behind the bank there on Line Street, and Anna Hibbs when I was 5 or 6 years old, I started taking piano lessons from her. That's where she lived. And then on the other side of that was the hatchery. We had a hatchery in Buskville at one time, and McCoy's owned that. And that was I think it was empty for a while, and then there was a plating company bought that, and our oldest son worked there when he was in high school, part-time. I can't remember what was on beyond that. Oh, okay. There was a greenhouse on down Line Street, right beside of the fire station. And I don't remember who owned that. They had it for a while, but was it Richards that had that before? Wasn't it Richards? I think
somebody's mentioned that.
I think that was who had that before. But I'd like to go in there too.
I 61. Remember after the wedding, Tommy and Bob was.
Okay. Okay. But that was there for quite a few years.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. And Eagles Coal Company was on the corner of Mulberry and Washington Street. That's not there anymore. That was a big building. It's where the library is now. And they're just a lot of things. Alma's garage at the corner of Main and Tully. There used to be a garage there, and then before that, that was the blacksmith. There was a blacksmith shop there. I can't think of the man's name. See a visual picture of him and his wife. I can't think of their last names. I'm not thinking of it. But they were there before they moved downtown. That's where they were. And then Hodges Dairy was just between Mulberry and Main Street, where C&A Tool is now. And I remember going over there a lot. With my grandfather or by myself getting ice cream and milk and that kind of things. I'm looking at Vandalia Station. Vandalia Station, there used to be the railroad that went through Churubusco, and there was there's pictures of that. I got some note cards at home the lady at our church did, but that was by the hotel, and that was on the east side of Main Street, right downtown there. I'm trying to think what is there now. The post office. That's where the post office is now. But all of that was right along in there, and that was kind of right in my neighborhood. I used to walk over there a lot. In fact, my grandparents and I lived in the old hotel, and that was in that area right there, just north of Vandalia Station. Of course, a lot of your hotels were by the railroad tracks back then. But we lived in that hotel, I think, for about a year, and then he bought that house there on Mulberry Street, and I can remember living in that hotel. We had just a potbelly stove in the middle of a big room, and I can remember that pretty well. And, the feed mill was there across right by the railroad track, just right near where I grew up. I can remember the train stopping there, and they had this big chute thing, you know, that would load the train with grain. And one of the stories with the feed mill was I had a cat. I've had a cat most of my life. I'm kind of a cat lover. I guess I'll never outgrow that. But I had a cat, and he'd been missing for several days. Well, I didn't tell my grandmother or my grandfather where I was at or what I was doing. It's a good thing I didn't, because it was just as well it turned out the way it did. But I was over there at the feed mill, and there was this big open. They had a big sliding door that opened when they opened, you know, for when the train cars would park there to get the grain in. And there was a big opening underneath there and everything. And I was out calling that cat every day. Well, I got over there and I was calling, and I heard this cat meowing underneath. It was my cat, and he had a trap on his foot. So I crawled. I know what the underneath side of a grain elevator looks like. I crawled all the way under that grain elevator to rescue my cat, cobwebs, and probably rats and mice and everything else, but I didn't even think about that. And I'm still rescuing animals, so I don't know. I guess that's not all bad. My grandmother, when they found out about that, they just about had a fit. But my grandfather took the trap off of my kitty's foot, and his foot swelled up just like a wound. But he got okay. He was all right after that. But anyway, that was one of the memories I have of the. And I knew some people that worked there, but I can't remember what their names are. I can't think of that. Well, that's gone, and I can remember my grandfather going from Columbia City to Churubusco. A lot of times he would take the side roads, and probably Connie's folks can remember this too. They used to have barn raisings to build the barns. Did your folks ever say anything about that? Well, my grandfather helped with some of those, and I wish I'd have paid more attention. I know he would point out different ones. He said, well, I helped with this one or that one. I haven't the foggiest notion, and they might not even be there now. I don't know. But, you know, and they didn't take pictures of things back then. I got a few old pictures, but, you know, they're few and far between, and some of them I don't even know who the people are, and there's no way to ask now, so I waited too long. But, you know, the neighbors would all get together, and they really helped each other out then. You know, you knew your neighbors then because you worked together on things like that. And Bachman's implement store is gone. That was there for quite a few years. It's where the credit union is there west of Busco now. Oh, I think I've talked enough. Probably somebody. Oh, Maloney's. Remember, that's where, what'd you say the name of it was? It used to be the 33 Club.
Well,
It's still a 30. Well, the 33 Club's still there, isn't it?
It's not bought it.
Okay, well, they bought it. Okay, well, where the 33 Club is, that used to be, John Maloney owned that, and my grandmother and, what was her name? Opal Harder, both worked there. They weren't barmaids or anything like that. They didn't have barmaids then. But I got a picture of my grandmother standing with John Maloney there behind the bar and everything. But she and Opal did the cooking and washed the dishes and that kind of stuff. They had a great big kitchen in the back and everything. So I don't even know if women went in there at that time. I suppose maybe there was a few, but I really don't know. And then Pat's Cafe, which was a very popular restaurant, was right there just north of Maloney's. And oh my gosh, that was in existence for years and years and years. I don't remember. I know it was there probably about the time I was born, probably about 1940 maybe, or maybe before that. And I know she made I don't know how many pies that woman made every day, but she made homemade pies, and that was one of the things that people went in there for, especially men, for the homemade pies. They were supposed to be really good. And then there was an A&P grocery store in the middle of the Flatiron building there on Main Street, and my husband worked there when he was in high school. Stan Myers owned that at the time, and that would be Max Myers' father, Judy Myers' father-in-law, that owned that. They had that for quite a few years. And then Ort's department store was downtown, and that was just north of the A&B grocery store, and I can remember that pretty well. Ned and Alma Freeman started their business when they first moved to this area. They, I don't know how many years, they weren't there too many years before they moved to Columbia City. They started that store, but they bought it from Orr's. And they had a lot of neat things in there. And the Green Grill. Of course, that building's still there, but it's not the Green Grill anymore. And then Shelton's.
I was going to say the IJ's.
I'll let you talk about the IJ. You can talk about the IJ store, because your brother. No.
Everybody else remembers all that.
Oh, gosh. Smiley's. That's now C&A Tool. That was there on the east side of Busco there at almost at Busco, or at Main and Whitley Street. And then there was a mobile gas station there that Everett Leach owned. Wasn't that mobile gas? Mm-hmm. Our middle son worked there during high school. And but Smiley's was the place where the teenagers, the kids all gathered, you know.
That was our after-school activity.
It was, and after ball games, and after movies, and they had a jukebox in there, and you could go in there and eat and socialize. And there was the kids that lived close to Busco from Huntertown came over there, so I kind of thought of them just being from Busco because they were over in Busco so much, and we got to know them pretty well too and everything. So that was always fun. And we had church activities and YF and different things like that. And I don't know. I can't really I think I better quit. I've talked enough, so let somebody else.
Norma, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I can think of is the movie theater,
Yeah,
which is what we did a lot of. Every time that the movie would change, we would be there walking, and we would walk from Line Street to the movies.
Sure.
And I loved the Sunday shows because it was the musical dance shows. And Friday and Saturday was the Western. I still went and watched it. I don't know what for, but I do remember the theater a lot, the movie theater. And then, of course, my brother worked at the IGA store, the old one, and now he owns the IGA in Busco. My dad used to work at the lumber company as the lumber driver that Marla was talking about. And then they got in appliances, so he was the washer and dryer and person that worked on them and sold them. And then my mother used to work at the hatchery. So I would walk to the hatchery to see my mother. I'd walk to the lumber company to see my dad. And then we had a paper route. My brother and I and my sister had a paper route. And we picked our papers up across from the lumber company at that filling station.
Yeah, that's another
So a lot of memories there because I didn't like the dogs in the paper route because we rode bikes and I didn't like that too well. And it was so cold and to do it when it was cold out. But I worked at the Pat's Cafe maybe one night and I quit.
Why did you quit, Norma?
I didn't care for it. That was an experience. But I worked at Barnhart Drugstore. I loved that place. I made a lot of sundaes. I made a lot of shakes. And Mick Harold and I worked in there. And then Mick opened up his own drugstore.
And that moved across the street.
And that's really about a lot of memories in town. But Marla had quite a few.
Well, I know, but I forgot someone.
How much was movies?
About a quarter.
Gosh, I used to go and see some of those, every night, or if it was a real good movie.
We'd
Yeah,
always go.
sure.
That was an activity.
Sure. It would be the same one, maybe 2 or 3 times. It was a real good one.
So you're talking about it, where was the movie theater?
Oh,
Was it on the street?
across the street from
The Catholic
Jesus
Church?
Fair. You know where the funeral is?
I've always thought that
was the
has to
movie.
be
Yeah,
where
it
the
was.
movie theater is because it looks like where they
Right,
displayed
yeah.
the signs, what the movie was, and
There was
Califat.
Mr. and Mrs. Califat that lived down on Main Street, and
They were in the movie theater?
Mhm.
yeah, that was fun.
I don't know of anybody else that operated that, do you?
No.
I think they were there for a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm a Collins kid, but I went to school, I went to first grade at the Collins School here, which was just down the street from the church, Collins Church where we are. And it was grades, I think it was 1 through 8. But they closed it the year after I was in first grade, so I only got to go to first grade there. And we didn't have kindergarten then, so I didn't get to go to kindergarten. But there are a couple things I remember about Glasgow when I was little. In the summer, I always went to the library, which was upstairs, like Marna said. And I always thought that was so cool. You got to go up those big steps to the library. And I remember Dr. Minnick's office was where Wellness Healthcare is now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the doctor's office. Didn't go to Glasgow for too many things. The library, the doctor's office. There was a dress shop that I used to go in when I was in school. We would walk downtown on our lunchtime, and she had the best whorehound candy. Gladys's dress shop.
Yeah, Gladys Johnson.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yes. Yes, and that was, wait, is that where the new Busco News is now? It was along there somewhere.
It's
in that
back
area.
this way.
Okay,
It's
it was
back this
before.
way. Right
yeah,
next to where the Busco News, I
Okay,
think, wasn't
it
it?
was in that area.
Was it right there, I think?
On the opposite corner was Swivel Shoe Store. We got our
Right.
shoes there. I can remember before school started, Mom and Dad would march all the kids in there and get us our yearly pair of shoes. And next door to that was the furniture store. Was it
Mhm.
Mayberry's?
Mayberry's.
Yeah. That's about all I remember about downtown. Oh, and the grocery stores.
Sure.
There was E-Golf's across from the shoe store and Catty Corner.
There was a Kroger at one time too, there where,
I don't remember.
Well,
the
it's
shoe
where
store
Wanda's-
was.
yeah, that's
I remember
where Wanda's-
Leach's
Fabric
Was
shop
that
was,
it?
yeah.
There was a Kroger in there.
Oh, I didn't know that was.
There was a Kroger store there, probably a few years ago.
Western
though.
Auto.
Yeah.
Quite a few
Yes.
years.
Western Auto is
Auto.
where
Yeah.
the news, Busco
Right.
News is now. That was in
Before
there.
that was
was-
Anderson's Ice Cream Parlor.
Western Auto was owned by Mr. McDaniel and his son John, which is
Right.
right. But I'm Vonda McGowan, and I live in Smith Township, and I have most of my life. We left here for about 7 or 8 years to do the college and first jobs thing, and then came back. Like I said, I went to school at Collins School for 1 year, and then I went to Busco, and we got to go through 6th grade in the old school building that in the winter you watched the wind blow the walls back and forth, and that was an interesting old building. But we had to leave the school and go around the building to the old barracks, which was our cafeteria. And we were all excited in 7th grade when we got to go to the new school building. 7 through 12 was in the new building, and now, of course, that's K through 12. On Sunday afternoons, we always had relatives visit. I lived on a farm, so all my cousins that lived in town, their moms would bring them out to our house to play with I'm one of 9, so there were plenty of kids around to play games and stuff. And we always played ball and all kinds of things. My brothers always had all their friends. I had 3 older brothers, and my 2 oldest brothers always had guys in the neighborhood. In the winter, they would pull each other around with rig up something behind the tractor and go sledding and through the snow and whatever they could rig up. And they played basketball in the summer, either the one attached to our windmill or the one in the haymow. It had 2 basketball hoops. In the winter, I loved to go to the neighbor's pond and ice skate. The Cormanies had a pond, and I got skates for Christmas when I was in 7th grade. And every day after school, I would go in and get those skates, and I would go down to the pond and skate. As long as there was ice on the pond, I would skate. And sometimes, if there was enough water in the field that froze over right across the road from our house, I would just go across the road and skate on the puddle. In the summertime, until I was old enough to babysit, I used to top onions for Bill and Shirley Claxton. Hated that job. It was hot. We went there barefooted, and the muck would burn our feet. And I think we got a quarter or 50 cents a crate to top the onions, top them and let the onions fall in the crate. And the only thing I liked about it was I got to hang out with the kids. They had 6 kids, so that was fun. But as soon as I was old enough to babysit, I gave up the onion topping job. I was in 4-H for a couple of years. Wasn't in sports. Back then, girls just didn't have too many choices as far as sports was concerned. My parents always took all of us kids to the fireworks in Columbia City when it was out at DeVal Field. Sat on the hill and watched the fireworks.
Half of the day before they started.
We always went to Turtle Days and Old Settlers. Sometimes they would let me go to Turtle Days with a friend, spend the night with them, and I didn't have to go with my siblings. I remember the old Collins store that was here in Collins, up on the other end of this road, up the hill. Kendall and Louise Sechrist were the owners. They never had any kids, and they ran that store, I think. From early morning to late at night, there was a gas station there, and he pumped all the gas. And I know they had the old Coke machine that you could reach in and get the old Coke.
Did that sit out the front there or something?
Maybe it did.
I don't know. But see, my great uncle, Lyman Goodyear, worked there.
Yeah, he was my next door neighbor.
Yeah, he was right. Lyman Crable, Lyman Goodyear.
Yep. But that was always fun when you got to go with Mom or Dad over to the store by yourself, because then you got candy. If they took several of us kids, then there probably was no candy. But that was torn down years ago. I don't know when, but that closed many, many years ago. And I lived a couple miles from here, but on Halloween, Mom would dress 4 or 5 of us kids up, and the oldest one would, the little ones would tag along behind the oldest ones, and we would walk over here and get to trick or treat all through down this street and in all, what, 10 or 12 houses in Collins. Because there weren't, houses were fewer and farther between than they are now out here in the country. That is probably about.
Sure. A lot. I'm Jody Gardy, and I live in Smith Township, and I think I've lived in Smith Township my whole life. For 6 years, we lived over at Blue Lake. Is that a different township?
Same one.
Is that Smith? So I've always lived in Smith Township. A lot of the things that I remember are somewhat similar to Vonda because we live right next door to each other. So we loved going to the Collins store. We rode our bikes over there. And it's funny, of course, Whitley County has, you know, South Whitley, Columbia City, Busco. And I can remember as a kid, we thought Columbia City was so far away. We used to write letters to our cousins who lived in Columbia City. And we always did that all summer long. And I can't wait until we get to stay overnight with each other. And now I'm thinking, what? We wrote letters back and forth from Busco to Columbia City. I did the same thing. We used to top onions in the summertime. And I don't know how many years I did that either. And I think it was when I was young and didn't know any better. And then as I got older, we went on to better things because it was a hot, dirty job. One of the things that I actually brought, and I'll pass it around, it was just so unique to me. And I brought the letter and pictures where we live now, which is on County Road 450 East. One summer day, this was it must have been like in June of 1988, we were getting ready to leave our house, and our oldest son, our only son, Justin, had ball practice. He was only 9 years old then. And we looked out in the yard, and we saw this whole group of people standing in our front yard looking around. And we walked out and we said, "Can we help you, you know?" And they said, "Yeah, we're having a family reunion." And we're thinking, okay. Well, their family reunion was the woman, the oldest woman who was there. She was 77 at the time. She was born in our house. And her whole family, she had lived there for years. I think she said they went to the courthouse to see where she had been born and lived. And she actually sent us a letter, and I'll read the letter. It says, "Dear George and Jody, I am enclosing a Xerox copy of your house and barn, probably taken in the late autumn of 1911. On the same page is a picture of my mother and father, Macy Miller and Harry Kitson. I, Lucille, am the infant on the second page. I believe my picture alone was taken at the same time as those of the three of us on the porch and at the barn. I was 77 on the 28th of March, and after seeing the buildings, I think both they and I have weathered life very well." And this is from Lucille S. Longview. And it's a picture of our house and our barn, and her mother and father, and this is a picture, I don't know whether they were the original owners or not, and then this picture of the baby was her. And at the time when they came, it was before we had done any remodeling on our house. So the house looked almost identical to what it did back then. This picture was just the same. And I've kept this all these years. I thought, I can't ever throw this away. I just love it. And
What was her name? Was she
well, Macy Miller and Harry Kitson were her parents.
Kitson, her mother was like
Kitson. Yeah, Harry Kitson. So that's just something that I just cherish, and it was just such a fun day when they came, and started talking, and then the reason I actually have all this information is because I told her, I said, she showed us pictures that day, and I said, oh please, I said, would you send us copies of these pictures? So she actually did it, and I've had them for all these years.
Did they come in the house then?
They didn't, and this is a terrible thing because, I mean, I had a young family. We had a young family who were getting ready to leave to go to ball practice. I didn't want them to come in and see a messy house. I thought if I would have known they were coming, I would have, you know, but I didn't know. So they walked around the property. There were pigs out there. They looked at the barn and the house.
And we're happy just to.
It was neat. So, and it, being that young, I don't know how long she lived there. She might not have remembered the inside of the house, but let's see. I've always I went to Busco all through my school years. I've always lived on a farm. A lot of different activities in school, like FHA and cheer block, and now that's something that I remember that I don't think they do anymore is cheer block. We had a lot of fun when we were growing up being in cheer block. I think that's it. There was just a couple of things that I remembered that were similar to Vonda around Collins, and just this story about my house.
Well, I'm Lois Carmody, and I don't have very much, but I can't remember much about Busco, but I was in the city. And I can remember when Rexall Drugstore was across from the bank, or from the courthouse, about in the middle of the street. I don't know where white leathers are now, but it was right in there. And there was a Walgreens on the corner. Let's see, what's the name of that place now that has, right across from the courthouse?
North of the courthouse, it was half of Tamar's there.
And I worked in there all through high school. I worked in there at noon. I'd go up at noon and work, and I think I started out at 30 cents an hour, and I saved money. And this is going to really date me, but I started out in a one-room schoolhouse with a pot-bellied stove, and I think there was 8 grades. And it was out past, you know where the county farm used to be, on that road? It was out there on a corner, and I can't remember the name of the school. But I can remember in the first grade that I got the measles. And we just lived down the road from there. And the whole school came down to, well, they didn't come in the house, but they come down and brought me gifts when I had the measles. I don't know, I remember that all these years. I can't remember too much else. I can remember where the movie theater was there, and Citizens Bank used to be right there on the corner. And can't think of anything else right now.
Connie?
I'm Lou Ann Workman, and I've lived in Smith Township all my life. I graduated from Churubusco High School, and I don't have as good a memory as you guys do. It's impressive to hear everyone talk about dance. I did top onions for Bill and Shirley Claxton also, and I even remember picking up potatoes, and that was after school started, and we would wear our cut-off blue jeans and go barefoot, and it would get cold because it was after school in October, I think, is when we would pick up potatoes and things. But a couple things I remember is my dad would bring Santa Claus to town. He had a sleigh and with the horses, and different years there was no snow, so he rigged up these coasters or some kind of wheels on the sleigh and brought Santa Claus to town with the horse and sleigh. I remember that. Remember when we used to have Halloween parades? That was a big deal. That we would. I don't remember going to people's homes and trick or treating, but I don't know if it was the Lions Club or who sponsored, but we would have. Or maybe the JCs or somebody would have. We'd have a parade, and we would dress up for Halloween in our costumes, and we could never have anything evil. It always had to be, you know, princesses and different things like that. But we would have hot dogs and cider and a parade. I remember doing that. The different costumes and things like that. So inexpensive fun. You know, it was inexpensive and clean fun, I guess. I can't remember the movie theater, so that must have been before my time, or we just never got to go. But that's just a couple things I can remember.
Okay, I am Barbara Jones. I was Barbara Miller. I grew up in Etna Township, 2 miles west of Etna. To bring up a little bit about Etna, a few years back, and my father attended Etna school, and several years back, a bunch of them, of the older group, put together a book about Etna. So there is really some old history going back. Back in the 1924, it was known Etna School as a 3-year high school without a gym. But their boys still went outside, played basketball, and the principal drilled the boys. So they, back in 1924, did not have a gym, but they knew how to dribble a ball, probably right out on the playground, according to this, outdoor court. I attended the Etna school, which was just about a 4-room, 2-story school. And not sure, but I went to Larwill then through our 7th grade, 8th grade on into high school. So according to the record here, it looked like it closed in 1952, 53, and I graduated from Larwill in 57, so that's pretty close to that. Going back to these other gals talking about Churubusco, I had to entertain myself in a little town called Etna that had one gas station owned by a local man, and his daughter and our family were always close because it was just a little town of probably 100 people, and I'm not even sure there was 100 people back then, but there was a gas station, and that gas station has operated over all the years till just here a few weeks ago. I seen in the paper where the man that bought it off of Grover Gardy is now closing it. But he kept it open and done a lot of little odd jobs there. But Mr. Gardy that owned it back when I finally got a car, or drove my folks' car to Etna, 2 miles to get gas, always wore bib overalls, chewing on a cigar, and he always wanted to poke you in the face or pick on you through the window. But he was a lot of fun. There was a grocery store that was locally owned, and it changed hands different times with different people in the community. So it was kind of a little treat when I went with my dad to Etna to get gas, that we could go over and get an ice cream bar or something, candy bar probably too. There was an outside movie theater, that you might say, back of the man that owned the barber shop, and it was just a one little car barber shop size of a building there. And they would hold movies ever so often, and I don't know who operated them or ran them or anything, but once in a while we would have a movie up there. Back probably when I was just young, from probably 10, 12 years old, Etna was known for what they call the Lord's Acre Festival. That was operated by several different churches. So they had a few cakewalks, parade. Now we're talking about a parade going 1/4 a mile down the street in Etna, around the block and parked at the church. But, you know, looking back, it was quite a thing because people, you know, from Ormus Church, my church was Etna, West Etna, and then there was an Etna church. So we had 3 or 4, Troy Presbyterian, I'm not sure, participated, but there was several. So there was always a little parade involved. Going back to the girls was talking about sled rides. My father made a bobsled, like that they pulled behind the old cars. You held on just with ropes on the side. He had a steering wheel that steered the sled. We would go, I lived close to Noble County line, so we were up in some roads that you could have a lot of fun pulling that sled behind the car. And also, back talking about a sleigh, my father had a sleigh he bought when he was young, pulled it by a single horse. I've got pictures of that. We rode that sleigh several times, probably when I was 5, 6 years old. It hung in his granary till 10 years ago, and I purchased it through a sale and have redone it. So we still have the sleigh. Down at Etna Troy School, there was what they called cakewalk festivals. The community just packed in there years ago, and they auctioned off cakes and cookies. So it was a money raising for Troy School. But I look back at a lot of little clippings I've got. My folks were involved in farm beer. Approximately 150 people attended the Etna Troy. That's just their own local farm beer meetings on Monday night, which included 4-H achievement programs. It goes through listing so much involvement of so many different people in the community. My mother was in the Demonstration Homemakers Club. They were attended by so many ladies in the community because nobody worked. I mean, a lot of the ladies, my mother never worked out of a home. So it's really interesting when you look back, and the REMC was involved with the farm beer a lot. And I have no idea the dates on so many of these, but when you look at them, you know, 100 people attended this, and 50 people. People went to a lot of the activities back then. And I guess we still do, but it's neat to see there was a lot of neighborhood groups and associations, and even on Sunday night, my folks with 3 other couples went from house to house and made homemade ice cream. We had cake and ice cream every Sunday night in somebody's house, whether we needed it or not. My dad. The gals was talking about working. Glenn Galloway owned what you call a farm up there that he had Mexicans come in and pick strawberries, tomatoes. I went to work over there with a lot of the young boys, and they were doing their language, and I'm just nodding my head with yes and no. Mr. Galloway comes down the aisle and says, "I'm fired because my strawberries are getting too hot in the bottle. I'm not picking fast enough." So I didn't last as long as the Mexican boys did. But they were nice people to be around. Even back then, as a young girl, I thought, you know, they were a little different than what I grew up with, but we had a lot of fun. Throw strawberries to each other and everything. So, I think that was kind of the main thing here a little bit. I guess I might think of something a little later, but oh, I did want to share a little bit. My father graduated probably in 1932 or 33. Went to school for electrician. Became one of the first guys in Whitley County, him and a couple other young men, to start putting lines in for a lot of the homes in Whitley County. And over the years, my father was an electrician that brought in a lot of electrical to homes, milking parlors, and of course it went on into advancing with electric heat, but through REMC, he had a lot of good pictures and stories of doing that over the years. But
did he do the electrical and kind of keep that going at the 4-H building too? 4-H fair?
Yeah, he was president of the 4-H Corporation and helped them purchase more ground there. And a lot of the guys back then thought, we don't need to be spending all that money for all that ground there at the 4-H Center. And my dad has always was proud of the 4-H fair because I think they kept to the local, and ended up being in my fairground. So that's pretty well. I did graduate out of Larwill then.
I'm Connie Gross, Nestle, Techmeyer. I didn't think I had anything to say until Mama started talking. So I just jotted a few notes. My history of Smith Township, and I've been in Smith Township, Whitley County, most of my life, or at least in Whitley County. However, I live in Allen County now. I didn't have the city activity you gals did. I didn't get to town. My folks went once a week to get groceries. I didn't go into town, but I always heard there was a big party on Saturday nights and all this stuff. But I wasn't a part of that. We lived 6 miles out. Well, not really, because I walked to town one day when I was 6 years old. I wanted to get my hair cut, and so I walked down to the other farm to catch Dad, because he was going into town. Well, I got down there and he had already gone, so I just walked into town anyway. And Mom gets a call, says, I saw your daughter walking on 33 in the bus car. So needless to say, Dad found me in town. I didn't get my hair cut. I wasn't very happy. And I'm still walking, so I must be part of the tree. You know, can you imagine a kid today? There's no way. Oh, gosh. They wouldn't want to walk that far to begin with. They wouldn't be safe.
You would say that.
And you talked about activities. We were active in 4-H. And, you know, again, our 4-H was one of the nicest 4-H's around because you could go in the morning, turn your kids loose and pick them up at night and go home. You know, it was great. Your parents were there and they were involved in it and everything. So that was good. We had chores to do at home. Being farmed in the garden, and I used to like to ride the tractor and be out on the farm with Dad. Remember buying gas for 19 cents a gallon. And we also did a lot of sliding down the roads in the wintertime on a sled back of the tractor. And Mom worked away from home when I was young, and Dad worked on the farm, so we stayed at home and worked there at home. Nobody mentioned the dugout. Anybody remember the dugout in the corner of Whitley and Noble County? That's right. There was a murder there years ago, and it was a famous, who was it? He was killed, but who was the famous, I was thinking Jesse James or somebody.
Dillinger.
Dillinger.
Is that that gas station in the corner where the court?
At 33 and
It's Noble County. They're in the station there.
It's a T road, like a 102.
Yeah.
This is really good. Let me change the tape.
Okay. Okay, well, this was the dugout. It was up on the corner of or the Tri-Lakes Road. Yes. Yeah, there was a Zoom room that got killed there years ago by a Dillinger. That was one of the famous Dillingers that killed people.
And I don't remember too much about it. I was just,
They had a baby. Didn't they have a small child baby? They were just a young couple. The fellow.
I don't know that. The only thing I know is we lived just 3 miles from there. And my dad had just been to the dugout just before that happened and come home. So he was just there prior to that. The Dad made one weekly visit to the dugout. And there were 6 kids of us, and he brought home a pint of ice cream, and we shared that. That was a real treat for us. We got a taste, but that was a treat for us to get a pint of ice cream. But that was a dugout, but that was quite a famous place. And they say, supposedly, Dillinger came back when they were investigating because somebody spotted him in a crowd or something. So I don't know. But, you know, being out in the country was a little different than what you kids had here. I do remember wearing a feed sack dress to school, a dress made out of cloth, out of the burlap sacks.
and they had pretty prints then.
They did, some of them were. And also, my underpants had buttons on them.
Wow.
I didn't have any of those. So you were in trouble if they broke. And I went to school at Collins, and it was 4 rooms with 2 a room. And the principal's up right up there. I only had to go up there one time that I remember. Or throwing an eraser or something, I don't know. I'm sure Barb made me do it. Anyway, yeah, I do remember that Collins was one of the first schools that had hot lunch programs. Our mothers came in and fixed our hot lunches.
Wow.
We had it before Churubusco did.
You brought it back to your desk. You went
Yeah.
down to the cafeteria,
Yes.
got it, brought it back to your desk, and
That's
took your plate back. It was hot lunch.
Yep. And also, we played softball out on the front, and there was a sidewalk right down here, and your second base was on the other side of the sidewalk down there. If you hit a ball just right, I'd hit it and bounce way back the other way. But that's when they let us girls play with the guys, because there weren't enough guys to play without us.
Yeah, right.
That was the only reason.
And they had the coolest merry-go-round I've ever seen.
Yeah, we did have an old swings.
Yeah.
Another thing I was thought about in Busco was the Flatiron Building. There was a dentist up there, Weaver.
That old Doc Weaver.
Weaver was up there. And
Right at the top of the stairs
Mhm.
and to the left.
Right there. And when my dad was trustee, his office was there.
That's right.
And that's when the fire burnt that out too. And also the Masonic Lodge and Eastern Star and Rainbow. We had those two different locations there in Churubusco. Two different times. It was, then it was above the old bank.
The bank.
I remember
There's
those
two different.
days across from.
Yeah, it was. And after Rainbow, we could go into Smiley's was still open then at that time.
Yeah,
We
sure.
were at Smiley's restaurant. So that's about all I thought about. So I'll pass on to Bonnie. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't grow up in Churubusco or Whitley County. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I didn't move to church. I moved to Smith Township in January of 1992. I remember it was a blizzard. It was on New Year's Day. It was horrible. And one of Todd Linville helped move us. I remember because he was. And we moved into what is the old parish farm, and we kept asking them to let us buy it, and they kept refusing, so we found a house to buy, and then they turned around and sold it to one of the Zigglers. Which really ticked me off. Yeah, oh, he knows. I've told him all about it. We were talking about it at soccer practice the other night.
But who lived in the house you lived in? Who'd you buy?
And then I was going to say that Norm Bushman built our house, and actually that whole neighborhood was built by the people that owned the woodworking company, if I understand the history correctly. And I don't know if that was JR or if that was his parents.
It's been his dad?
Was it his parents?
Shively?
They built, there's like 6 houses in this neighborhood, and they built that. And our house was actually the model home for that neighborhood, if I understand the history that I've been told.
Now, Wishman's on a cleaners.
Right, and they own the cleaners that was turned into an Horizon Real Estate, and then it was a pottery shop. It's been like 10 different things since we've lived in Churubusco.
Very place to be.
And now it's a general store. It's called Perry's General Store.
I just had to go into that too long ago.
And Perry's General Store, they were down in the Turtletown Plaza for a long time. And it's right across the street from Gordon and Sloper Well Drilling, which that's how I ended up in Churubusco. Because I grew up in Fort Wayne, and my mom married Bob Sloper Jr. And the Gordons and the Slopers owned Gordon and Sloper Well Drilling. And they when they first got married, they bought the house on Blue Lake that used to be the boat rental place, and it had mobile homes next to it. And we used to go up there and visit them all the time, and my mom had several grandsons and no grandchildren, and they were spread out all over the United States and Germany. And when she had her first granddaughter, we were moving to Churubusco whether we liked it or not. And so Bob, my stepdad, went and talked Dick Parrish into renting I think it was his grandmother's house. It might have been his mother's house. because it was just been sitting there empty for years. And
His
so,
mother, Stella Parish.
yeah. And then I remember when we went in to look at it, me and Billy were cracking up because we went upstairs and there were so many flies in it. I looked at him and said, this is like a horror movie we'd seen or something. You know? It was really bizarre. Moving to the country was a big thing to us because I grew up in apartments in Fort Wayne, and moving to a house in the country was a very drastic change for me. I learned to deal with spiders and bugs and all kinds of freakish little creatures. And well water. Anyway, we, and then they moved, and then they sold their place on Blue Lake, and they went about this, right, well, I guess it was before we moved to Churubusco, and they moved out on Johnson Road, which is considered Columbia City, but it's out by where you guys live. It's right on Johnson Road there. And then we moved into the Bushman's home, and we lived across from a cornfield, and it's now CNA Tool. And the woodworking company was behind us, and then they tore that down, and it became a Dollar General store. But now they built another, the people that own the woodworking store built another hardware store. And so that's behind us, and actually gave us our privacy back, which I was kind of happy about that. And I'm trying to, I've been writing all the things I can think of that changed in the short time since we've lived there. And I just remember one thing that my mom said to me when she first moved to Churubusco. She said, well, when you move up here, nobody will come and visit you because you might as well live 1,000,000 miles away from Fort Wayne. Nobody wants to drive from Fort Wayne to Churubusco. So if you want to see people, you have to drive to Fort Wayne. And now that I've lived up here for all these years and drive 15 miles anywhere I want to go, that still holds true. If people live in Fort Wayne, they're not going to drive to Churubusco to visit. You have to go visit them because it's too far away. And what they don't understand is our neighbors are considered Fort Wayne. Right. Literally. I mean, we live 2 houses down from Allen County, which is now Fort Wayne. So, and my kids are mad at me because they wanted to go to Northwest Allen County schools, and they didn't understand why we didn't buy the house 2 houses down instead of where we live. And the property that we live on, from what I understand from history that people have told us, is that it's been a big fight between Whitley County and Allen County because nobody wants this piece of property. It's like swampland. It's like they have all kinds of problems with it. And so now it's Whitley County. It has been, but I know there's always rumors floating around we might get stuffed back into Allen County or whatever. It's this weird piece of land, I guess. I don't know. And the different things that have changed just since we've lived in Churubusco. I remember when we first bought our house, we lived across this nice, quiet little street. Nice, big old cornfield one year, bean field the next year. Nothing but stars in the sky. No longer, we didn't live there 6 months, and now I have a big, gigantic yellow M out my big, beautiful picture window because they built a McDonald's with this big, ugly sign. And at the time, there was commercials on TV that showed this baby swinging in a baby swinger, and it would wake up, and then it'd fall asleep, and wake up, fall asleep, and it would flash onto this big yellow M sign, and my sister would tease me, that's my baby. Because I was furious when they put that sign up. I was like, I used to see stars in the sky, and now I see a big yellow M. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it's horrible. It's ugly and it's horrible. And then they also, right when they put that McDonald's in, they built the BP across the street. That used to be, I can't even remember. I think that was just a lot or a house or something. I don't remember what that was.
Well, there used to be an old gas station there where the BP was there.
It used to be a little drive-in, wasn't it?
I don't think it was when they put the BP in at the time that they put it. There was.
It might have closed several years before then.
Yeah, I always think there was a house there, and then they put that because I remember the BP got the right of way first, and they started building it, and they got stopped because the town wanted McDonald's to come in, and McDonald's was making all these demands. And I remember the people that were building the BP had a video rental store on the north side of town that is now a car lot, I think. And we used to go in there all the time and talk to her. My sister-in-law actually worked there as a clerk, and she was just so upset. We'd hear all about it. And she spoke German, so sometimes she'd get really mad and start talking to me in German. And I wouldn't know what she was talking about. I can't remember her name. And then I'm trying to think what else has changed. Well, I guess I have. They built Turtle Town Plaza wasn't there when we moved here. That was just the, what is it? It was like they sell farm equipment and feed and what is it? It's still there. I can't think.
There was just nothing there, just the old one.
Yeah. Well, that building was there when we got moved.
When did you move here?
In '92. And then they slowly built on Turtle Town Plaza. And then that gas station on the corner of Blue Lake Road, where the Conroes live.
It was sports shop.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a gas station because there was two buildings.
Well, they had a gas station
There
there.
was like the sports shop was on this side, and then there was like an old gas station.
They sold bait, and that's where you got your license, that's where you brought in
Is
your
that what it
deer.
was? Okay.
That was the only place
Right.
around that they would
Phil
take your
Phillips
deer.
sold that.
Well,
He
there was a
started
place,
that.
are you finished?
Yeah,
You were
and then-
on.
Oh, I was just talking about all the things that have changed. It's I've never realized, never really thought about it. I'm trying to think, like where the Lighthouse bookstore is, it's a dance studio now. It's changed.
Everything in that building is
Changed, yeah.
The flower shop, the house, and the flower shop, and
Uh-huh.
the sports, what is this, photography studio?
Uh-huh. And then they also built, they renovated the library. Remember that being a big deal when they renovated the library. And I was happy about it because coming from Fort Wayne, we have this huge library. And then I was like, oh, this is the library. Okay.
That caught fire once too, didn't it?
I mean, that was just shocking, but that,
It did when it was in the
that was the one thing I claimed to fame for when they did have the library.
Where it's at.
And then I'm trying to think, they just recently built the oil and lube place, which I didn't think was a good idea just where it is because of traffic. Right in the middle of a neighborhood across the street from the school. I thought that was a little bizarre because it's crazy in there in the afternoons. That oil and lube shop right behind the school parking lot. And I'm trying to think.
That's pretty new.
Trying to think of what else. Oh, I guess they built
Was
the family
Farmers and
down.
Merchants here when you moved to that big?
No, that has been added. That whole plaza down there has been added. And then Jones's Greenhouse, they've added that. Where the mountaintop is now, there was a gas station next door to it, and I used to love to go in there because I could actually have somebody pump my gas. And I'd come and see my mom. Yeah, I'd see my mom.
He's deceased now.
Is he?
Yeah.
I would come up and see my mom, and I'd always go out of my way and go there and get gas so I didn't have to get my baby out of the car. And I love that. And you know, I'd start talking to him while I was pumping my gas, and he'd always talk to me. And then he'd always check my tires and my oil for me, so make sure I got home okay, because he knew I was going clear back to Fort Wayne. And I was sad to see that close.
Now, I think, didn't Paul Heron run that years ago, back in the 50s for a while, or early 60s?
Yeah, because he had
Yeah.
the
Gas
gas truck.
right.
Yes, that's when we
Fuel
got our
truck.
papers all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when we congregated every night after school.
Right.
And and since then they've added the new credit union that was out by the doctor's office where Williards is. They built a credit union over off of 33 in Anderson, right across from the Baptist Church. 205 in Anderson. That's new. That Napa Auto Store is new. They took away the Orse Funeral Home, and now it's like Subway and a dentist shop and some other businesses. So just in the time that we've lived here, there's been a ton of things that have changed. And but it's the weirdest thing is just living in the town. My kids have grown up here. Because we moved here, our oldest daughter was not even 1 year old. She was only like 6 months old when we moved here. And so it's really weird because Bill and I, when we were growing up, both moved a lot. We lived, like he lived in rental houses, I lived in apartments. We moved all the time. and just living, like, we've lived in the same house for like 15 years now, and just our kids know everybody in town, and it's just really, our kids have just had a totally different lifestyle than what we had when we were growing up. And so I'll be interested to listen to them when they get older to see their viewpoint of how things are.
The H&O Sports Shop at the south side of that used to be a little drive-in.
Oh, really?
Because my girlfriends, Marcia Flowers, and I'm using maiden names, and Sarah Pattenbrock both worked there in the evenings, and sometimes I'd go in when they got real busy and help them, and I always thought that was big stuff doing that. But it was fun, and that was kind of a hangout too.
Was it?
The kids then, yeah.
I've heard stories about the movie theaters from lots of people. Yeah, stories about the movie theater, going to the movies.
Yeah.
When they were kids. I've heard lots of stories.
They have some movie theater seats over at the Columbia auction. We go over there quite a bit on Saturday evenings, and I wonder if they were out of the theater downtown there in Busco, or maybe they're from the one in Columbia City, because they look just like the ones. And I'm telling you, some of them are in bad shape. Bad shape. I think some of them you sit in, the seat slopes forward, but I wonder if they aren't out of one of the old theaters here, because they've been in there for a long time.
My name's Norma Egoff Crable. I have just a couple things to add about this gas station at the corner of 33 and Blue Lake Road. It used to be called Phil Fly's, and it started out as just a very small coffee shop, and then he made it into a car hop type drive-in thing, and with loud music. Okay, that was a kind of a little hangout for us back in the 50s. And in 1960, when did we buy it? We bought it in 1968. We bought the H&O Sports Shop, had it for about 8 or 10 years. And it was fun because it had a restaurant, it had bait. I mean, I wasn't on that side, I was on the restaurant side working. Gas station. At one time there was a mechanic in the one building, but we didn't have that service. But it was fun to buy clothes, bait, and all kinds of things for the fishermen. That's where they hung out. And I'll never forget someone saying, our pastor, Lynn Hart, says, well, I might as well have church on Sunday morning out to the H&O.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's where all the men were at on Sunday mornings. But it was noted for breakfast for the guys and everything. So anyhow, we went through that experience, and that was...
And my son worked out there as a young boy in school.
I forgot.
We had a good time because my mother and his mother, when we bought it, went in there and cleaned that thing, just trying to get it clean. But we did, and it was okay. We lived on Line Street when we were kids, and we could hear the music from Phil Fly's. It was that loud. And we'd open up our bedroom window and you could just hear all that music. You know how loud they had that turned up? Now, when we lived on Line Street, my dad had a garage in the back. Sarah and Dick Conroe ended up buying the house that we lived in. They started singing tool in our little garage. That was where they started. Dick Conroe started it right in that little garage. Now, Mary thought that Dad built that garage, but I think the garage was there when we moved.
Well, it was there when I was down there a lot. Yeah. I know did you have rabbits at one time?
Yeah.
Yeah, you had rabbits.
But I don't know if Dad built it, but I think it was there. But anyhow, sealing tool, a pretty big sealing tool in town, that's where he started his business in that little garage. So I just wanted to add to that. And another thing I wanted to add was where the Mountaintop Coffee House is right now downtown. It's where the Truth Office used to be. Did anyone mention that?
Yes, right.
Yeah, our local newspaper in Busco had that right there across from the lumber company. Kind of across from the lumber company. That's where our Busco Truth was at one time. And one other thing I wanted to add was the dime store. No one's mentioned anything about. And I just loved going into the dime store. It was kind of along where there was a barber shop where Schroyer's is at now. There was a barber shop, the alley, and then the dime store.
Yeah, because it's where the insurance office is now. It started out there.
Yeah.
Because I can remember that real well.
Then the Barnhart Drugstore.
Right.
Leach's Grocery, and so forth.
Burwell's Hardware was on the corner. That was another place.
But I know no one mentioned that. And another thing I do just want to mention, when you said you had a brick from the old schoolhouse, I have got a, Mr. Vesey, Harriet's husband, built bulletin boards out of the old chalkboard slate.
Oh, bless his heart.
And I bought one from her and I use it every day.
Oh my God.
I got it and I write
Isn't that
notes and
wonderful?
happy birthday to the kids and everything on it. And that came from the old Churubusco school
that
that they tore down.
wonderful. I didn't know he did that.
Yeah, he did. So that's kind of all I wanted to add.
Well, I have one thing to say.
Okay.
I'm Susan Belleville, and I moved here from Michigan because there was no jobs up there that were very good, and which there still aren't. But in 1980, we moved here, and when we came to town, D.G. Swoverland was selling real estate at the time, and we went to call to see if there was something we could rent. And he took us to the Barnhart House, which the dentist, Dr. Cullison, owned at the time. And it had sat there for 2 years with nobody in it, waiting for us. So we bought it. And then the one thing that I want to mention that really made the town nice was we couldn't walk downtown because the sidewalks were so bad. And some of the houses and stuff, like the auto, that Max Auto or something, was right on the corner. This guy that owned this house right on the corner from us was always trashed with old tires and stuff, and the town made him clean out, and other places too, clean out. But they put in really nice sidewalks and painted. I mean, the town had improved 100% since we were moved there in 80. It's just a really nice town now. Just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Sue. I think we have a very
nice.
You know, when you go through some small towns, I mean, there's a lot of buildings are sitting empty, and you know, it just hasn't. But nobody's
taken care of.
It's not taken care of.
Yeah.
And everything.
Oh, and there's one more thing. When we moved here, several people said if we lived there long enough, we would become related. And
There.
Yeah. Our daughter married somebody from there, and our son married someone from there. So we are now connected.
As a young girl, there was always a Fuller brush or a Watkins man or a woman, and most of the time I think it was men, came around the neighborhood selling, which my mother would buy a few items. And I was trying to think there was something else. Your sweeper men would always come in the neighborhood to see if you needed bags for your sweepers or whatever. And I do have a picture somewhere boxed away down on Highway 5, and back then it would have had to been new 30, but today we call it old 30, Lincoln Way there, north of Larwill. There was a guy that would come through probably peddling everything on his little wagon, more or less like a little wood wagon, and he was pulling it by goats, and then he would always have a couple goats behind, like the young ones or whatever. My folks would always drive down there or seem like we were going through town or around and always see that. But I do have pictures, and it's just loaded down with everything hanging on the side of this little covered wagon. And I'm thinking, those goats were peddling all over the country probably back then. I mean, he wasn't a local person, I don't think, at the time. So I thought about the Fuller brush and the Watkins.
Oh man, I forgot about that. I remember there's one guy, the same guy came for years and years and years and sold Watkins products. And he always stayed and visited. He was a real nice fellow. I remember that. And they always kind of looked forward to that. You know, they didn't feel like it was a slower paced life then. You didn't feel like you were being intruded on your time or anything. People took time then to visit with one another, and somebody, you know, and you weren't afraid of people like that coming into your home, that they were going to, you know, cheat you or rob you or something like that. I said it was just a lot safer and more calm time that we lived in at that time.
I went to church in West Etna, which is still in operation, but back then we had to go outside to the toilets. Everybody in the church, and it wasn't until just a few years back that a party, they upgraded and put bathrooms in and added on. Yes, just in the last 15, 20 years. They finally decided the church was going to continue there.
Mom has a story to tell.
Oh, you're talking about I think it was the Watkins man. Came to our house one time, and the girls were in the house, and
You were out in the field.
I wasn't in there, but anyway, the door was open, the inside door of the little porch. You walk through the porch, and the inside door was wide open. Well, he come in, and he come up and kind of knocked, and nobody, the kids were in the house, and they saw him coming, and they went and hid behind the sofa. And he came clear in the house, looked around, and went back out. And the girls were back behind this sofa, hiding the whole time he was in there.
And then when Mom got back up to the house, we told her all about it. This guy came in the house and just walked all over the house. And oh my gosh. Yeah, I knew somebody was there and he
Were your girls scared, you remember?
Probably.
They're probably just back there giggling.
You were probably scared, not knowing him.
Now, wasn't the Watkins salesman that sold the chlorine salve? Was that from the Watkins?
Oh my gosh.
'Cause I remember that was wonderful stuff. We used it for a lot of things. Everybody had chlorine salve.
I think you got that on the magazine.
It was good stuff. My grandparents always had a tin of that.
Because Bob used to smell
Did he sell it too?
Yeah, when
Oh,
he
for
was
heaven's
a
sake!
very young kid.
I don't remember that. I don't think maybe, but their vanilla was really good. I remember my grandmother was on vanilla. She was mentioning ice skating, and that was another thing. There used to be, back where the Scout Building is now, back in that area, there used to be a huge pond and a lot of trees, and that's where we went ice skating at in the winter. There'd be gobs of kids back there with ice skating. I remember Dick Poe he would not leave me alone. He used to tease me unmercifully. I remember one time just laying down on the ice and bawling. I says, "Go away, get away from me, leave me alone," you know. And he had me in tears. Oh, God. We had a lot. And Kugler's Larry Kugler's dad had that little gas station that sat candy corner there between Almond's Garage and
Next to Tri-County Truth.
and the Tri-County Truth there. And I always thought that's the only place I ever saw, and that was a little gas station. Well, Overhalser's, didn't they have it before? I don't know if they had it before or after Kugler. Harry Kugler had that.
There's another building
Wasn't
too
there an
I'd like
Overhalser?
to add about where the,
That's not there anymore.
where the post office is now, the big hotel. Do you remember the hotel there?
Yeah, I lived there when I.
Is that the one you were talking
That was
about?
one I was talking about. I think there was 4 different apartments in there, 2 down and 2 up.
That you said the train ran behind it? Is that?
Well, right beside it, right south of it was the train track. The Vandalia, the hotel, Vandalia station, and then, yeah.
We used to have, it was kind of a town community center where Santa Claus would come, and that's where we'd all go to get our snack from Santa. If the Orland Mills came in and took pictures, that's where we went in, and they took our pictures. But was it the Legion in there or something like that?
Yeah, there was a Legion there at one time too.
And then there was apartments up there.
Yeah, there was I think Legion.
But that used to be like the community center in Busco. That was I remember, and that was all torn down.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of things that aren't visited, very little that's still left, or it's been changed so much it doesn't look the same, you know. And the train, I remember another thing with the trains coming through. There used to be a lot of hobos that would ride the trains through town. And you know, I can remember when I was pretty young, you know, they jump off the train. Well, they'd be hungry. They hadn't had anything to eat. They come to my grandmother's back door and she'd feed them. You know, hobos, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My grandmother did their own highway.
Yeah, but now, my gosh, you wouldn't think of doing anything like that. You know, we weren't, nobody was afraid or anything. I mean, nothing.
Now, how long is the building that, like where Bargain House and all that is now, how long has that been there? Because it's like every.
Forever.
Isn't it that is that the Flatiron?
Yeah.
I've never seen a picture of Churubusco without that.
Yeah.
Have you guys noticed the history of Busco that's in the paper now?
Yes, that's nice.
That's very interesting. Chuck Jones, do you know Chuck? They're putting some write-ups in our local paper.
Yeah, we get the paper at the library.
And that's really, I think, interesting to read all that.
Yeah.
And you see the pictures of the old days where it used to be a dirt street down Busco, all that.
Sure.
Horse and buggies and the dirt
Right.
streets.
And you mentioned a lot of the changes. That is the changes that's made us grow. You know, that's a part of it.
Alrighty.
All right, well, thank you, ladies. This has been great. And if any of you would care to come and do an interview by yourself, you want to bring your pictures, please feel free.